In Asia, we've constantly got reminders that we're the biggest growth area in the world. And looking at the US and Europe, it's no surprise given how the growth there has gone over the last couple of years. But Simon Littlewood says that people in Asia aren't selling hard enough. Are you out of your mind?
I don't think I'm out of my mind. It's not just Asia, it's emerging markets in general. So the story that we insist senior executives pay attention to here in Asia, but would equally be true in parts of Eastern Europe and Latin America, is this. The fact that you are reporting higher levels of growth, significantly higher levels of growth than your peers in the US or Europe, does not mean in and of itself that you are being clever at what you do. In fact, our evidence suggests the contrary. In other words, if you look at what's a measure of effectiveness from a selling perspective?
Sales, obviously.
Well, yes, except that if you are working in a market which has an inherent rate of growth, say you're in the specialty chemicals segment in China, which has recorded rates of growth of 30% some years, and let's say you're in that segment and you're selling 25%.
You mean sales growth is 25%?
Sales growth per year. I mean, are you winning or are you losing? I mean, we would argue, and we repeatedly do this, we take the 10 or 11 largest sectors by country in Asia and we look at relative rates of growth within particular sectors. And what we say is companies are growing at 50%, some companies are growing at 0% or 4 or 5%, and there's an aggregate rate of growth for the sector, which typically aligns with the actual rate of growth of that particular segment, the level of demand. So the level of demand, in the automotive segment is growing at 18% on average. So if I'm not winning market share and I'm not losing market share, I'm basically selling, my sales are going up 18% a year, which sounds great. When I go and play squash with the general manager of the US company, he's struggling to get 2%. He's saying, how do you do it? God, you're so lucky. But in reality, I'm actually just managing a set of relationships that are delivering growth in and of themselves. If I were actually differentiating myself by having an effective hunting sales capability, and it's hunting that we're talking about, I would be acquiring market share. I'd be moving up to another quartile. So it wouldn't be 18%, it would be 25%, it would be 30%. What I tell clients who are serious about building sales, competitive sales capabilities, is that they should be growing at twice the rate of the market. Okay.
Right. And if your market's growing 40%, you've got to go 80%.
Well, I don't know too many markets that are doing that.
Well, you mentioned specialty chemicals at 30.
Well,
so presumably 60% would be an acceptable rate of growth.
It would be very acceptable, but you might start by 40. I mean, my point is, let's come back. What is the role of a salesman? Is the role of a salesman to go visit the same account and take an order? Because that's what we're describing. If you're growing at the rate of the market, that's all you're doing. You've got a set of accounts, their levels of demand are growing at 15% because consumer demand is growing at 15%, and so you are selling 15% more every year to them. But you're not actually doing anything. You're not intervening. You're not adding value. So what's the measure of your success? The measure of your success is that you're acquiring market share from the competition. So you have to be doing something much harder, which is to be knocking on new doors or persuading your existing clients to take new value-added products that they're not currently taking. These are harder things to do. These are qualitatively different things to do than simply iterating around the same account day after day after day, which is much more about taking the guy to karaoke or Starbucks or whatever it is and making sure that he's happy. Yeah.
Right.
And the point is that as the emphasis on Asia, and this is where you started, as a source of global economic value grows, as it has done recently, because America is in the doldrums and Europe's in the doldrums, it's important for business leaders in this region to understand this. To understand that there is a lot of value being left on the table because the availability of easy growth has led in many sectors to a complacent and reactive farming sales culture.
Well, yeah, I mean, why grow 60% when 30% might be enough?
Well, exactly, and because the reality is that to challenge the culture of an organization spread over many countries, and specifically to challenge behavior which occurs outside the office, so is not visible, is a big people challenge, and it typically requires some steely determination because it will not be welcome, because people are very used to being told how great they are.
Well, and they're very comfortable. Come on, I've made my numbers. I grew 25% last year. What do you mean you want me to grow 50%?
Well, I'm a shareholder, and it's very evident to me that you're having a pretty easy time of it. You know, I mean, I think the value's there, and I think companies that seriously aspire to lead in individual sectors increasingly recognise that.
Right. So as a shareholder, you could even ask that question at the next AGM.
Yeah.
Great to see you grow 15%, but the market's growing at 20. Why aren't you growing at 20?
I mean, the point is that the visibility of those kind of issues is constantly growing. It grows as a result of the fact that for large companies, the share of the global pie contributed by this reason is progressively growing. And historically, 20 years ago, every large multinational was here, but sometimes it was 1%, 2%, 5% of global contribution. I mean, nobody was going to look at what a salesman was doing. Suddenly it's 30%. In the case of some companies, it's 40%, you know. And it is now a business critical issue. So this value that's being left on the table because salesmen are cruising when they should be hunting is now a global critical issue for many large companies. And, you know, what we do is we solve this. We solve this, first of all, by going into individual markets, looking at sales behavior and telling business leaders in a very detailed way exactly what's been done and what's adding value and what's not adding value. And that's where it starts. It starts with behavior.
It's very uncomfortable, though, this process, isn't it? You mentioned that just now.
Yes, I mean,
so
how do we operate
that?
in a zone of discomfort. Yes, I mean, there's no question about it.
You look a little bit uncomfortable now.
We operate in a zone, but you know, it's like we talked about CRM a minute ago. I mean, the fact of the matter is that the trouble with IT is kind of like Father Christmas. You know, you know, we don't have to worry about changing behaviour or looking hard or having a difficult conversation about how we can get more growth because we can have something delivered in a box that we can unwrap.
Don't you like my white beard?
And we can plug it in, and it will solve all our problems, which of course is, you know, is something that comes out of a horse's bottom. Oh, if I'm allowed to use that word. But reality is that in this region where skills and processes differ widely from country to country, are often challenging and unevolved, it's much more about behavior and process. Yeah. So the fact is that business leaders, if they're serious about getting growth, have to concentrate on those behavioral issues. They can use IT as an enabler, but it comes down to understanding what people are doing, what level of skill they have, what choices are they making. So do we understand where our growth should come from? Which accounts and products should we go after? 1. 2, do our salespeople have time to grow those accounts? And that means, what are they doing with their time that is not actually growing the business? So are they constantly iterating around small existing accounts? Are they wasting their time on admin? Are they hanging around the secretarial pool? What are they doing? Yeah. So we look at that and we basically say none of that, right? And typically we find that anything up to 30 or 40% of sales time can be reassigned. Yeah. We take that additional time, we take the insight into where the new growth is, and we put them together using a funnel process which says, right, here's the additional time, here's what that represents, here's your new accounts, go after them. Right. And we then, in addition to training them, we then change the incentive package so that growing an existing account by an essentially organic rate has a lower weighting in your variable pay than going after new stuff. And this is very important because a dollar is not a dollar. Shall I explain that again? A dollar is not a dollar. There are 2 ways that you can get 30% growth on your accounts next year. One is simply to manage your existing accounts. Another is to go out and find new accounts. Finding new accounts is much tougher. And because it's much tougher and it takes more time, it should be compensated differently. So there should be a requirement that some of the growth that you deliver comes from new unexplored areas, right, and that should be disproportionately weighted in your variable remuneration. In other words, this whole comfort zone where you're going to get, and you get this kind of cycle where everyone feels good, everyone gets all their bonuses because you set a target which is in line with the growth of the market. Now, you know, if it doesn't affect behaviour. Yes, so yes, I'm deeply unpopular wherever I go because, of course, all these are things that people don't want to do. But companies that are prepared to bite the bullet and go down this road will find that they reap dividends. Very significant improvements in growth. And not only that, but by changing the culture, the growth repeats itself. It becomes year after year.
Right.
Yes.
Very interesting, Simon. And now you can send me your invoice.